Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today at www.arganissima.com. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our...
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. We're your host, Hurricane Age. As always, new guest, new show, new day, new topic. And today's again, it's a dear topic to my heart, to myself, to my family. It's a topic that there's not enough discussion about. At least we need to do more. And my guest today is going to really take us over this topic and subject in a deep, way. And hopefully we can, benefit as listeners and audiences right now from this particular discussion that we're going to have today and my dear guest. And my guest actually will talk about a lot of things, and you guys are going to be very impressed with who she is, and everything that's about her is going to be impressive. And I have to say, and again, I'm being a little funny about this because I haven't introduced you yet. Well, once you see her and once you hear about her, it's going to be a whole different fun time. It will be fun time. That's it. And she is an author. She wrote a book, and this book can change lives, literally. And we're going to talk about that. So I've been mysterious enough. With me today, I have Lynne Bowman. And again, she's author of a diabetic, concept book. And we'll talk about all that. So first things first, Lynne, welcome to the show. And thank you for being with us.
I am so happy to hear you talk about me. That's great. I'm really feeling good now.
I'm a fan.
Great to be here.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I totally appreciate the idea that the fact that you're with us. I know you have a lot of things to do in life, but I know you have a mission is to help people and give them real advice. And, one thing about you that's so special is, as you said to me before the show, is I am old, but I enjoy it and I want to tell the world about it. And here age is actually a beauty thing because sometimes we use age as a qualifier or disqualifier. Ages shouldn't be. It's how we deal with age and how we age and how we live our lives. And you've had a like I was talking to you earlier about your background, such a diversified background. I mean, you have been an actress, a journalist, you were a weather person on TV. You've done so many things. You've helped some very, very famous people, and you were featured with Deidre Hall and did some stuff with her in public. So there's a lot of stuff about you that people would enjoy today. So I summarized it, but let's get deeper. Tell us about who is Lynne Bowman.
Well, you said I'm old, and so it's a long story, Hurricane. And when we go back to the sort of resume items, when I started out in the professional world in 1964, 1965, 1966, we women didn't plan out our lives and plan our careers. We just did what was there because there was nothing available to us, really. You could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, but mainly it was you were being brought up to be a wife and a mother, and that was about it. Harvard was not co-ed; it was all guys. So, and I say that because it was representative of the whole world that was in front of us. But starting in, I guess, a big way in 1964, which was the year that I graduated from high school, we lit a match to a lot of that stuff. We just blew it up and it got kind of crazy. But in that time, we just did what we could do. I grew up in LA. I grew up in Pasadena, actually, and was born in Hollywood, of all places to be born. So when we went out to get jobs, it just happened that a lot of them were in show business. It was a company town. That was the business that was there to be done. So a lot of my friends were in show business. And when I say show business, I don't mean having great parts, and stuff. I mean, people who were sweeping the floor and hanging the drapes. And, this was what we were doing. So yeah, some of my first jobs were sound a little glamorous when you say it, and I love to hear you say it, but they were just jobs. They were what was available to be done. And I left UCLA in 1966 and just thought it was boring and stupid and didn't make any sense at all. I wanted to work. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do stuff. And so I went on a one-way ticket to Europe, which who does that anymore? But back then it seemed like a good idea. So I went, and things happened, and I don't know, where do we start this thing? The whole diabetes thing. Now I'm going to slam us forward from the 60s into the present day. Well, let's say halfway along. I found out in my 40s that I was a type 2 diabetic, which was unusual because most people don't find out until later. And because diabetes, as you know, I think you know this, doesn't have symptoms. You don't know you have it. The only way you know you have it is to get a blood test, a hemoglobin A1C blood test. And that tells you what your blood glucose has been over a period of time. So, and I want to say right now to anybody who's listening, especially you men, you're not good about this. You don't go and get your checkup every year. You don't want anybody telling you what to do or what to eat or anything else. But please, for me and for anyone who loves you, go and get tested if you're over 40. Now, that's probably not you, Hurricane, because you're so young looking, but maybe you're over 40. And have you had your hemoglobin A1C test?
Yes, I did.
All right. Okay, great. When?
As a matter of fact, only a couple of months ago.
Good. All right. How you doing?
Awesome. So by the way, the reason I do it is because, as I mentioned to you earlier, my mom is diabetic. So I do have a very high chance of being diabetic over time as I age. And so I have to monitor, yearly, and I do that actually pretty often. So,
but the old thinking was that your genes were destiny on this. They're not. They're absolutely not. You can make a decision and take control and pretty much avoid it, pretty much prevent it. And if you do start edging into diabetic territory, you can pull it back. It's all in what you do and think and eat and sleep. And it's not just carbs. We kind of used to think that it was just about carbs and sugar. And the newer information actually, and I don't know if you're ready for this.
Go for it.
You're a pretty brave guy, I think. But the new information is that it is meat and dairy consumption. It is animal fat.
I'll buy that. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's more to this than people know. There's
more to this. So it's the quality of the carbohydrates that you're eating, for sure. But I went to, I had the book about half done, and I went to this conference in 2019, the Plantricians Conference, it was called. And this was 1,000 doctors from all over the world who are kind of, they're surgeons, they're MDs, but they're kind of renegades because they're the people who believe in healing with food. And that makes them not in alignment with the American Medical Association, particularly. But so they all got together, as many as could fly to Oakland, California. And for some reason, I just had to go to that conference. I really needed to put myself there, and I did. And I took a little printout from my book, a little kind of promotional thing, and thought I would talk to these docs and find out if they would use it in their practice and so on. So for 8 hours, well, no, it was more than that. It was from 8 in the morning until about 8 o'clock at night, every day for 5 days, PowerPoint presentations, which for me is close to torture. But I sat there and I watched this, and it was data and more data, and then still more data. And these docs would get up and tell their stories. And I realized that I was going to have to rewrite the book. I was going to have to retool the recipes and do it a slightly different way. because the evidence was clear that the reason your body cannot take up the glucose is because of fat in your cells that clog it up and prevent your cells from processing the glucose. And for all these years, I thought it was carbs, and I mean, I never met a pork chop or a steak I didn't like. It was a big time meat eater. And but I did my best with my weight, and, I tried to eat a lot of vegetables and stuff. So my husband picked me up, and are you married?
Yes.
Okay. Then that when I said to him, when I got in the car, I said, guess what? Yeah, right?
Uh-oh.
What strikes terror in every man's heart? Guess what? And he said, what? And we drove a few more blocks, and I said, I'm vegan now. I'm going vegan. And he said, he didn't say anything for another maybe mile or two. And then he said, I'm in. And for 6 months, and I had just had my blood work done. And for 6 months, I was absolutely strictly vegan. Not one bite of animal related food entered my body for 6 months. Went back, got retested. Hemoglobin A1C down 3 points. You know what that means.
That's big.
It's big. And my doctor said to me, gee, Lynn, this just doesn't happen in women your age. And as I like to do, I said, oh, yes, it does. It just did. That's what I want people to understand, that there is so much more control in their decisions about this. And I want them to have this information. People, it's not necessarily something that people love hearing, because the idea that you're going to be deprived of a food that you love is like, oh, God, yeah. And that's why I did the book the way I did it. And that's why it's called Brownies for Breakfast, because the fact of the matter is you can eat fabulous food, better food than you've ever eaten, more interesting, more colorful, better texture, more spice, more thoughtful, more beautiful in every way. You are not going to feel like you're giving up anything, but it will not only extend your life, and this is all science, I'm not making this up, it will, even more important, make the life that you have a lot closer to the life that you want. And you'll back me up on this. Men particularly see their death as a thing that's going to happen at some point in the far future, maybe in a race car, or falling out of an airplane, or jumping off a cliff, or taking children out of a fire or something, right? It's going to be some heroic, fast thing and that's not how people die.
Maybe used to be thought that way. I don't think so. I mean, in today's age, I mean, people die of heart attacks and disease and stuff. It's just crazy. And it's amazing.
The way people are dying is long and slow.
And suffering too. Yeah. Suffering.
It involves wheelchairs, dialysis, endless intervention. And another thing that it sounds, this isn't exactly health, but the truth of the matter is that's how Americans are going broke. 85% of the bankruptcies in this country are health related, because not only is it going to take all of your energy and your health and your vitality, it's going to take all your money.
Medical bills.
To pay the bills. And it's preventable in most cases. It's, hugely preventable. Not everybody, not everything. Things happen. Plenty of people would be happy to see me fall over tomorrow, I'm sure. And but as far as you can change your daily routines and the way you're thinking about it, and the way you can have a huge effect on how long you're going to live and how well you're going to live and how much fun you're going to have living.
Thank you, Lynn. That was a lot of information, and I want to take a moment to just kind of break it down a little bit.
Okay.
And I want to retract back a little bit to the original discussion that you had about just your experience early on in getting in the business world. And the reason I say that is because you and I had that little quick discussion before about the experience of someone at your age, and what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've been through, and all the stuff is all lessons to be learned to the new generation and the next generation. And sometimes we don't have enough value coming in from folks that have been there, out there, seen it, and done it, right? And you said it. I mean, when you mentioned something about in the 64, the women had only few opportunities. That's something that's a lot of people listening to me like, really? They might not even know about this because it's part of history now. It's gone. I mean, some people may not even be aware that that was how bad it was, even through the 70s.
Ancient history, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not that far back, but because of the development, because of a lot of things that happened, I mean, we tend to forget that only in the 70s, the women liberation movement, really began, and it's really just a few years back. It's half a century. Literally, it's not even that long, right? And when you think about all this, it's mind-boggling. I mean, you said it, and it just kind of clicked on my brains right now. Like, wow, I didn't even realize that. That's how far it goes away. It's deep, but it's real.
Well, it's very real. In the 60s, when I started out, the way you got a job was you looked in the newspaper, and there was help wanted men and help wanted women. Two entirely separate places in the newspaper. And of course, the one for women was shorter, but it was a totally different kind of job than was available to men. And the only thing that kind of kept me from falling over totally into the women only thing was because I was an art major, I was an artist, and I could write, I could spell, I could use the language pretty well. And so my first job in advertising, 1966, in an advertising agency, downtown LA. And what we were doing was I was painting the plates that went into a printer because in those days we printed on these presses, right? And I would complain, I would say, but the words that you have with these pictures, don't you? And of course I would say, would you like me to do something? And they'd say, yeah, fine, fix it. Okay. So I would, but that allowed me to say on my resume, or in those days, we didn't have really a resume, but I would say to people, yes, I have written advertising copy professionally, even though all I was doing, right, was changing the words on these plates. But and that's how you take what you have and you make the most of it. And it went on from there. And then the big break I got, Hurricane, was, and this is not going to sound like a break, but I had to run away with my life, with my kids, 2, 3, and 4, from North Carolina, because I was married to a guy who was falling apart. He became violent. He was a vet, and that's a whole other story. Marine, Vietnam, all that. So I put my kids and myself on a train in 1980, and we came across the country to the Silicon Valley because my sister was there, and she said, okay, just come out, just do whatever you can do. And I lived in her driveway in a camping tent, one of those pop-up things with my kids until I figured out, what I was going to do next. And to make a long story short, because a couple of people said, you need to write that out. You need to write that story, right? And I don't know if you've seen, there's a series apparently on Netflix called Made.
I did.
Okay. And my kids said to me, she was a wimp, Ma. You ought to write your story. It's much better. So I don't doubt that it was a good story, but I've got one. And so I landed in the Silicon Valley in 1980. But the luck part of it was that it was the microcomputer revolution. So my sister, an engineer, sat me down, and that's a whole other story. How did she get to be an engineer? That's another thing. Self-taught to a great extent. She sat me down to her Apple II computer and said, you're going to learn how to use this because this is going to be survival for you. And I'm going, no, I can't. And no, shut up. You got to sit down. You got to do this. And so then I could type, because we were women, we all learned how to type. So I could type, but she taught me how to write advertising copy on a computer. So when I got my first freelance job with an agency, I come in with this computer under my arm, and they're like, "Whoa, she crazy? What, you can't, but I was able then, I was in the right place at the right time for the wrong reason. But I, for the next 20 years, made my living writing about technology for people who didn't understand it. So it was ads and so on for things, this new world of computer technology for consumers who had no idea what a modem was or why they would want it or whatever. So that was lucky for me, and I was able to make a decent living and bring up my 3 kids by myself.
Lynn, you are a pioneer in a lot of areas. I mean, whatever you're talking about right now, for a lot of listeners right now or viewers, they'd be like, wow. I mean, we take a lot of these things for granted these days. But that was live. I mean, you had to go through these things and make it. But you're talking about Apple too. I mean, that's like, wow.
Ancient history.
I know. I mean, you're talking about some stuff. Yeah. You're like the original blogger.
Well, my sister and I had an online business in 1992, I think it was. And at the time, it was just like, nobody, who's doing that? That's crazy, kind of thing. But I have come from a family of nerds. My dad was an engineer. My sister's an engineer. My now husband of many, many years is an engineer. And in this area, that's what people do. That's just the way it is. So it was interesting for me because my thing was communications, and I landed at this intersection between technology and people. And so I was translating for them, for regular folks.
Well, listen, Lynn, I mean, I'm listening. I'm enjoying this actually, because personally I'm learning, because sometimes it's important to realize, where we were, where we are today. And I think for our younger, folks and listeners, and actually these shows are actually broadcasting all over the world right now. So people can be in countries where they still live in some of the times where women may not have the same equal rights and so on and so forth. So
yes,
it is amazing. Yes, we're in the 21st century.
And we do not have equal rights in this country. Don't kid yourself.
I'm not even getting there, because I know that's a very, very true. No, well, again, we've come a long way, but we're not there yet. I mean,
we're not there yet. No.
Yeah, and I think we had a show before where we talked about it a little, as briefly as we could, but you're right. There's still a lot of work to be done on this and that area. And but still, I mean, your journey to today, I mean, it's a lot of different struggles, a lot of different, I guess, breakthroughs and different things. I mean, but it's all good. And for folks, even it's very inspirational that you were able to do a lot of things, even though the circumstances in the world was kind of almost anti everything that you believed in and you were willing to do. It's amazing.
And the truth of the matter is, now young people are coming into the professional world with an understanding that they're not going to have like one job that they do for, they might have 15 or 20. They might go from anthropology to teaching to scientific research in another field. I mean, it's always about adaptability and taking whatever skills you have and moving forward and looking and seeing and then jumping in wherever you think you can jump in. But now more than ever, I mean, our dads, my dad, they kind of entered the world thinking they would have a career in a place and they would move up in that company and they would be there for 50 years and get a watch and so on. And then they would, and you used the word retirement earlier, right?
Yes.
Well, if you've always worked pretty much for yourself, how do you retire? What does that look like? What does that mean? I can't even take a nap, right? I think I should a lot of times, but the more autonomy you have, And by the way, don't you think it's interesting that in recent years, it's been found that in addition to food and shelter and reproduction, humans need autonomy, and maybe as the number one need that they have before food and shelter and reproduction. We need autonomy. So no wonder some of us are thrilled to no longer be in cubicles. You know, COVID, as nasty as it is, has done some of us a real favor by showing us the value of being free, right? Of getting out of that building and getting out of that car and being home. And in my book, I talk a lot about the problem with eating with food now. You know this. The problem is manufactured food, fast food.
Hold that thought, Lynn. Sorry, hold that thought. I just wanted to break down a little bit more on what you said.
Okay.
First of all, you're right. I mean, I think the fact that someone, as you said, your father, it's not even back to your father's time. Even when I started my career path, the idea, again, career path, you started a job, you want to stay in that job and you want to grow. And I did produce enough, growth in it to get to the top of, the ladder in my field, right? But you're right, there's nothing more than having that autonomy, being independent, having your own company and enterprise. And you're right, these traditional school of thought was you go to school, you get into a job, you have a career, you stay in it, you retire, and now you're not doing anything. Now you're sick and life
And
is
people
gone.
die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've used this story, which happened to someone that I was working with. His father literally retired the same day, he died the next day. And it was just like, you work 40 something years only to just not even enjoy life. So I always tell people, enjoy life for every minute. I mean, it's precious. You cannot get every minute that goes. This second is gone, it's not coming back. And so take the best of it, make the best of it, and live your life. And you're right, when COVID hit, the debate about, being physically in an office and you have to clock in and clock out has almost, because the idea of you have to produce, you have to be somewhere, has been almost like a myth that was busted. It's not even real because people have been able to produce. I mean, some jobs you can't, you have to be physically there, but some other jobs you can function, remotely, and it has been. The war didn't stop. We continued. Most of the companies survived and they made it through. And a lot of people, even some of the larger companies, have adopted now, just work from home, communication, systems such as, Zoom and all the other technologies now. And that's real. But the mentality has shifted. Like you said, something about us being in that predicament of like you starting a job from school and just keep up. Well, today, you're right. The new generation, like my son, he's like, dude, I mean, he had already like 10 jobs already, and he's bouncing. He hasn't found his own thing, but there's a lot of younger folks right now that think in business, go for business on their own. And some of them, get into the digital world. Some of them get into the media world with the technology they have today. Some people don't even leave their homes. They're just living online and stock and all these things. So there's more today that we've had, obviously, in technology. We've progressed a lot. And that made a whole difference. And you're right, it affected also the way we eat. Now we can get back into the food business, because when you also stay home now and you're in front of a screen, that actually did affect, psychologically speaking, a lot of people, and even the food habits or the eating habits, because some folks, they consume with their work and they're sitting in an environment, they're not moving, they're not as mobile as they used to be. And they also, it's easy to order now. Your food comes to you. You don't have to do it. DoorDash, Grubhub, you name it. The food comes to the door. And it's, as a joke, I actually even had a company I started that's called Errands, just for that same purpose. So the concept of delivering food and not going out there has been a lot easier. Then you said the biggest piece is that the manufactured food.
Yeah.
Or eating outside, period. Even when you go outside, you're eating food as high salt, high this, high that. I mean, it's not as, the quality that you would fix yourself.
Well, this is such a big topic.
Go for it.
And you're going to get me wound up here. There is a $1 trillion industry that is dedicated to addicting you to crappy food. And it's worked. It's been very successful. And there is a lot more recognition now of how that's done and the fact that it is done. For a long time, we just kind of, I think, had a naive idea that if it said healthy on the package, if it's that, oh, it was probably fine, you know, it was probably healthy. But there is no question, and again, and this is science-based, lots of studies, that sugar, for example, is every bit as addictive as heroin.
Poison.
Yeah, it's poison. It's absolutely poison. And yet people will say to me frequently, they'll say, well, how can I cut down on sugar? And what Grandma Buzzkill here likes to say is, so what would you say if I said, well, I'm going to cut back on my heroin? How does that sound? It doesn't work. You have to go through rehab. You have to quit. You have to stop eating those substances that are so highly addictive that you are eating stuff at 11 o'clock at night in front of the TV. You don't know what you're eating. You don't know how much of it you've eaten, because it's literally engineered to keep you eating. And it works. It does. I mean, no one is going to deny this. You've all, everybody. And one of the things I learned at the Plantricians Conference that I mentioned was that the most addictive prepared food, this isn't going to surprise anybody, the very most addictive one is pizza. Because you can't eat a slice of pizza, right? Or even 2 slices of pizza. I mean, people don't put a lot of pizza back in the fridge to eat the next day. It is literally, scientifically, measurably addictive. So that's what people are eating. They're driving through. No, hardly anyone is cooking on a routine basis in the United States now. People are not cooking. And then the corollary of that is it is virtually impossible to be really healthy unless you do cook. You cannot eat prepared food, restaurant food, packaged foods, and be healthy. I'm sorry, you can't. So again, so I'm here with all the bad news for you.
No, listen, thank you for sharing. I mean, and you're right, this is all some serious business.
It's very
continue, because I know you still have a thought there, and then I want to just make some comments.
Well, so I'm here to say that it is easy to cook, it's fun to cook, and you parents are making a big mistake not teaching your children to cook if you're not, and not sitting down with your children and not teaching your children to be at the table with you, to use utensils and cloth napkins and to have a conversation. And I'm not making this up. Families, 2 generations now, hardly ever use utensils. They're eating chicken bits all the time. They're eating hamburgers all the time. So they go to baseball and they go to choir and they go to all these other things, but they are not learning how to eat with each other. And food isn't just food. Food is culture and connection, and it's a sacrament. I mean, it's your connection with the earth. So chicken bits aren't going to get you there. They're just not.
Well, they're chicken bits. We don't know if it's real chicken. That's another story. We can talk about that.
Well, let's talk about it, because in fact, when you stop eating factory food, which is chicken bits, factory raised animals, you're not only helping yourself and your kids, but you're helping the earth. You are doing one of the most important things you can do as a consumer to cut pollution and save a great deal of grief, not only for the chickens, but for all of the people who live in the vicinity of that chicken plant. They're horribly polluting the pork producers, the beef producers, all of it is factory farming is a huge, horrible problem in this country and many others, pollution wise. So if you don't want to do it for yourself, and I hope you do, I hope you'll do it for the cows, the chickens, the pigs, and the earth.
Listen, Lynn, you brought up so many great points right now, and I just want to kind of break out some of them. One is the sugar addiction, as you said, which most people may not even think how much sugar they need daily, and it's less than a small spoon of sugar at most if you need it just for intake. And the least thing,
need it at all.
well, that is true, but I'm saying even the most, that's the least that's the most you should get if you're gonna do it. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Everything we have today has high between sodium and sugar. It's not even funny. It just, it's amazing how much you intake. That's just, I'm talking about raw sugar and stuff but it's not even the real sugar. It's not like, cane sugar. It's just sugar that's manufactured. We don't know how it's processed and then you have all the other substitutes and stuff like that. That's one. Two, you mentioned something about pizza and food, like eating habits. You're right. Then first of all, the younger generation right now, it's all about, burgers, nuggets, pizza. I mean, the menu is very limited and it's repetitive, and a lot of it is just outdoors food, and it's not really healthy. Then you mentioned something about the fact of sitting, like a culture, right? I'm looking at your screen right now and looking at the background. You have a nice little table there. It's about
it's huge, actually. It's
I know, I see. But think about this, right? It's about that time where everybody's eating at the table. We share stories, how's your day and stuff. That's already lost. I mean, sometimes I'm challenged with my own family because, when the kids come in, sometimes they just grab their food and go. I'm like, where you going? Sit. And they don't like it, and it's a challenge. And then when they sit, they have the phones with them. No, put the phone away. And it's becoming a struggle, but that's been the new culture today. Like, everybody's on their own, everybody's in a rush.
And I'm here to tell you that the struggle is worth you winning. You got to win this one, because you're not doing your kids a service by allowing them to just go. And I also, your kids need to understand you're not their servant, you're their teacher. So you should not be the only one washing the dishes, cleaning it up, setting the table, all that stuff. I can't believe the stories I hear about parents taking their kids to college and having them not know how to wash clothes or cook or set a table or any of that stuff. I mean, why is it okay to maybe just barely pass a calculus class, but totally flunk life? I mean, right?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, first of all, you're right, Lynn. I mean, think about this. You will go in life past college, and you know what? Or even past high school, and then you're going to move out of your home, and life is going to be there. And life is not going to tell you, like, you can't eat, you can't go. You're going to have to figure out a way. Finances will actually be against you. If you're just eating outside, you're never going to make any ends meet, because you bring it and you spend it, right? Yeah. So, cooking healthy, that's the other thing, talking about healthy eating and stuff. You're not going to do that if you always eat outside. Maybe, once in a blue moon, you crave something, you go out, that's a different story. But you're right. The best way to eat is to eat. Like people used to make fun of me at work. I used to bring food home to the office, home cooking. And they're like, oh.
And they made fun of you?
Well, they were just like, oh, you always bring in your own food. Like, you don't want to eat outside. It's healthier. That was it. I mean, I'm talking about years back. But that was it. Like I bring, homemade stuff. And they're like, what is that? Well, it's just homemade cooking.
And did you ever say to them, and look at me, and then look at you, skinny? Well, hello?
I didn't go there, but
I wish I'd been with you. I could have gone there for you. It's like, look at him, and now let's look at you.
Well, but you're right, and there's that, and people sometimes don't realize. And then they're like, well, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Well, there's a few things that you mentioned something about diabetes, and that's actually the core of the discussion. Is that when I found out that my mom had diabetes, and that's 30 plus years ago, literally 30 years ago, exactly, to the day, to the month. And so I was much younger and he didn't care. I mean, I was very active and stuff. But as soon as I hit that 30 mark and my doctor says, you know what, your mom is diabetic, it's time for you to start, really being serious about it. I had gained weight, and it was not good. And I started really not feeling right about it. So that's when I made that commitment, to your point. Like, you got to do something. You have to, commit to this. It's not going to be overnight, but you have to do it. Like the addiction you mentioned, right? It's a decision.
It's a decision to be healthy.
And it is. And it was like, and some people even like over the years, they're like, wow, what a transformation. What did you do? Well, I just took it serious. I wasn't like playing anymore, because your health is wealth, as we know about that expression. And so the first thing is literally cutting sugars, and I'm talking all sugars, and like tea, coffee. I mean, coffee, there's discussion about coffee, but I can't live with that. I'm sorry. That's one thing.
No, coffee is coming out on top in the research. Coffee's doing
without additives, without milk, without sugar.
Nothing in it but coffee.
Yes, and I got into this, and it took a minute to acquire the taste for it. Even tea, like without any sugar, it's kind of blunt, but eventually you get to really taste it.
Do you drink green tea?
Green tea, yeah. Green tea. Well, yeah, primarily green tea. I mean, it's the and with mint and other kind of herbs, but really it's a big difference in terms of how, and literally that help. Plus, obviously, exercise, dieting, everything else has to be in place. The only thing I didn't give up is the meat, but I'm not a big meat eater. I just eat it, here and there.
And what I want to say to you and anyone else who doesn't think they can give up meat, if you eat meat that is raised by someone if you know that farmer, that rancher's name, and it's grass-fed. I don't mean grass-fed that at Safeway it's got a little sign on it that says grass-fed. I mean really pasture-raised beef. Okay. All right. But it's got to be pasture-raised, real, a steer that was brought up on actual dirt with grass, not corn-fed, not factory-fed. Same with pork. Okay, but I would prefer that you knew the first name of the animal as well as the first name of the farmer. You've got to know where it's coming from. Very important. And so you're not going to eat as much of it just because it's harder to find that. But it's all the difference in the world, Hurricane, to the quality of what you're putting in your body. What that animal has eaten, you are now eating. What that animal has experienced, you're now experiencing in some metaphysical way. So whether you accept that or not, I hope that if you're going to continue to eat meat, you insist on wild-caught fish and pasture-raised animals, and chicken, especially chicken. I want you to know that that is a college-educated, well-adjusted, happy chicken who has eaten real bugs and experienced life and grass and all that. If you're going to have eggs, make sure they come out of a hen who's happy and well-adjusted, and then okay. But the quality of the meat that you're eating or any of the animal products that you're eating makes all the difference. Absolutely a huge difference.
Then thank you for that advice. And I know that is the real thing. That's actually what we should be looking for. And that's used to be the place. That's used to be the way you get your meat. That's used to be how you get your eggs, Some of us may have better luck with finding that kind of meat. I mean, if you're in some states, closer to more farmland, you probably can. But a lot of us unfortunately, in the metropolitan areas, you go to supermarket, and even if you go to like the whole food types or like, the more organic, platforms, you might get lucky. But again, I'm not even going to speculate or make a disclaimer on that.
It's much easier just to quit. And when people say to me, okay, what are the like 3 things, the most important things about good health and long life, and so that I can be as mean as you, they're these things. First, sugar, drop it like a hot rock. Don't just cut back, just quit sugar. Make it a rule that you're not going to eat anything with sugar snuck into it in any way. You're going to read labels. You're going to be very aware. You're not going to eat sugar. That's number 1. Number 2 is if you have to eat meat, make sure it's pasture-raised, healthy animals. 3, no dairy. Eggs are not dairy, by the way. I'm talking about cow's milk, because it is virtually impossible for you to buy milk or butter or cheese that is raised in any kind of healthy way. The dairy industry doesn't work that way. So what you're buying when you're buying cow's products, cow's milk in any form, it's antibiotics, it's growth hormone. And I love the way this one friend put it. She said, milk comes out of a cow and is intended to take an 80-pound calf to a 2,000-pound bull in a few weeks. So think about it. Is that a thing you really want in your body? And now there's a lot of science about, for example, type 1 diabetes. There are a lot of studies pointing to cow's milk consumption as an infant or a small child as being a cause for type 1 diabetes, because it is difficult for human children to digest and process in their bodies. And I mean, we've been through all these decades of milk does the body good, and calcium, and people say, well, how do you get I get all my calcium from vegetables. It's not a problem. So quit sugar like a hot rock. If you're going to eat meat, make it the best you can possibly find. Meat that somebody really cared about raising properly. And then 3, quit dairy. And what's going to happen when you quit dairy is all of a sudden your allergies are going to go away. The runny nose, the icky skin, all that stuff, it's gone. And people say, well, why? I wish I'd known that, a long time ago, but I'm telling you now, you can be so much healthier really fast if you just do those few things. And then one more that's going to sound, I know, really hard, impossible. I would like to see you eating dark greens 2 or 3 times a day.
So I was going to ask you about what some of the foods that we should be looking into. So let's get into that one. So when you say dark greens, such as?
So
collard greens,
kale, spinach, all of those that your grandmother told you about and you didn't listen. Well, I'm here for her. And I'm telling you that you can do it. You can throw it in smoothies. I keep frozen spinach and peas and stuff in my freezer, and I just put and dump it in the blender. I don't measure anything. I just dump it in. And I know kind of roughly, and it's in my book, how to combine things. So this flavor is good with that flavor kind of thing. But so you can, and soup. And I've got a recipe in the book that's called Genius Soup. People have loved it for a long time. This is like my 4th book, and it's a recipe that has been out there before, because it's a thing you make on Sunday or Saturday. It's easy. And then you got this whole pot, and then you do something different to it Monday, and then something else on Tuesday and Wednesday, but it's full of vegetables. That's how you get your vegetables in, is make yourself a big pot of soup. You can also throw it in the blender and make a creamy soup out of it. But if you're not, the problem with the way people eat, they're eating bread and meat 3 times a day. So eggs, sausage, hamburger for lunch, dinner is a steak and something, potatoes. The problem with that is not what you are eating so much as what you're not eating. It means you're not eating all this great food where the nutrition is. The vegetables, the greens, that's where the nutrition is. And so if you're filling up on tacos, nothing against tacos. Tacos are fine if you use good materials and make them out of whole stuff. But I want you to have all the color and texture and nutrition in your diet that you can. And when it comes to weight loss, a thing that misses so many people is that the way these foods are designed now, that even right down to the hamburgers and the bread and everything, are to keep you eating. They don't want you full. They want you to keep eating. So when you start eating healthy, nutrient-dense food, and you know what I mean by nutrient-dense food.
Rich. Yeah, you don't feel like eating more. You're just basically full already, good.
That's and then you're fine. And another thing that is going to be shocking for a lot of people, all of the research coming out of the places that are doing these studies, not just in mice, but human studies too, is as much about when you eat as what you eat. And it's interesting to me because I first heard about this from my Ayurvedic doc friend who taught me about the Ayurvedic tradition. And that is that your body is hot and burning its fuel in the middle of the day. And so you should eat in the middle of the day when your body is working on that. And then as the day wanes and the sky gets a little darker and the sun goes down, you stop. You don't eat anymore at the end of the day. You're done. And that's always worked well for me. I've been doing that, but now there are all these studies that say that the healthiest way, you can add apparently like a decade to your life by changing when you eat, by reducing the number of meals that you have. You can eat the same amount of calories, the same food, if you eat it in a short period of time or even in one meal in the middle of the day. I mean, just stuff yourself if you feel like it. But then you have to not eat for a fairly long period of time. And the technical term for it is autophagy, which took me a while to pronounce, but it's this process that takes place in your body of cleaning the cells. So, and the picture that I like to paint of it is you're done eating at 3, 4 in the afternoon, you're done. And then that gives the night crew time to come in. And, you know, if you see it out on the streets, it's these guys who at night, they're doing this stuff because there's no traffic, right? And they're taking care of everything, and they're sweeping and they're trimming and they're doing all this stuff. If you're throwing pizzas down your gullet at 11 o'clock at night, what you're doing is this crew is going, wait, this guy's throwing pizza. We can't. So the cleaning crew has to stand back while the pizza comes roaring in, and then they have to get the overtime processing crew back. And that's a kind of childish way of saying it. But if you take one thing away from this discussion today, I want you to take away the idea, and the technical name is autophagy, that you can really extend your life and hugely improve your health by eating fewer meals, by eating in less amount of time during the day.
Lynn, I'm just mesmerized. I'm listening in and I'm just taking all that in. And by the way, it's funny because I do that. Believe it or not, I only have a light breakfast and one meal, and it's usually around 4:35 or just about that. Late lunch and early dinner, no more food, and I've been doing that for years, and it worked for. And I do have a background in martial arts, and in the martial arts tradition, ancient, even the samurais and the ninja, what they call the ninja diet, they only ate when they needed the nutrition once, every day to just get all the stuff, and it was all healthy business, and it kept them agile, as healthy as they could. I mean, they're warriors, for God's sakes, right?
And I'll bet they sat down when they ate. And I'll bet they ate gratefully. And I'll bet even if they were eating alone, they tried to eat with some reverence for their food and where they were.
That's a big deal. We stopped taking time to enjoy a meal. I think, but now it's like fast everything. And you're right. There's a cultural thing that based on industry marketing, the power of marketing. Talked about milk, it does your body good. These are things that we are conditioned to through suggestive, and subliminal messages, and we get those, and they're stuck in our subconscious, and we apply those things without even knowing. But you're right. Those are things that we were conditioned to, and then it shifted a little bit how really things should be in reality, but how we go about them. But that's been a challenge. And so a lot of things have become difficult for us, and new generation is even worse. Because like I said, I mean, they're just going to have a much more difficult time to live a healthy life. And you're right. You're talking about sugar at early age. My youngest son is 15, and he's already diagnosed as pre-diabetic, which by the way, you're right. The milk, high content sugar. And by the way, there's something that I was studying recently as just, I always look at articles and, things, what's going on in the meds because of the channel and everything. And there's a big link between sugar and cancer. And that's a
Oh,
huge
that's a thing. Oh, huge thing. Huge thing.
yeah,
Yes.
it is. So sugars, I mean, cancer cells crave sugar. So if you give it sugar, they're just going to continue without sugar and more oxygen. They're just dying, you know. So there's a lot of those new studies that are really, but the problem is because of a challenge, right? You have these studies that come in, and then you have all these manufacturers and things that can to produce more and do more. They'll do all the other stuff and to make sure that people are still not aware or give some sort of a, I guess, different opinion about it, you know. So there's that debate, but every person should do their own due diligence and look into things and do their research. And don't take it from us. I mean, you could, please. But, you know, if you don't take it, just go take this, find out the articles, do the journals, whatever, reach out to doctors, and you'll find there's more to this discussion that we all need to know about. Yes, you wanted to say something?
You make me think too, talking about your son, young folks and not so young folks these days are carrying frappuccino coffees around all day, right? You go into Starbucks and you're just going to get a coffee. Well, in that coffee it's almost all milk and sugar. And what's happening now is dentists are saying, oh my gosh, affluent families who see their dentists often have rotten teeth now. They're rotting their teeth out because they're holding this sugary substance against their teeth and gums all day. All day.
That's a big point you just made. And you know, you're right. We drink, like, we're supposed to drink water. Just plain water.
Okay, I got mine right here.
Right. So now here's a challenge. We drink more of anything else in terms of beverages that have, and everything that we pretty much drink out there today has high sugar, period. Besides the colors and all the stuff that's thrown in there, it's all high, you know, concentrated sugar. So you're really taking so much sugar just through your liquids without even adding the food concept.
Oh,
Then you have your natural sugars that come in from your
if there's anyone listening to this show who is still drinking soda, would you please stop? Please, I want to save you. But here's a recipe. You're going to love this. And it's at our house all the time. And when I have guests, I serve it all the time. And you take regular old mineral water, bubble water, you add a little splash of 100% cranberry juice with no sugar in it, and a squeeze of lemon, and maybe put some fancy little lemon slices in it. If you want company, it's delicious. It's so good. It's not too sweet. It's pink. It's pretty. Kids love it. And it's good for you. And it's inexpensive. There you go. Free. And it's also in my book.
I agree. And by the way, there's one thing you mentioned, since you mentioned soda, and this was my experience. Again, just about 20 years ago, I had the most horrifying experience of having kidney stones. And that was like, you know, again, I mean, the description of it, I would not do it justice. I was just literally jumpy, and there's nothing I could do. Morphine didn't do it. But, you know, and I tend to give a lot of my true stories on the shows, and people may think that it's just like, you know, anecdotal stuff. They're real, and I don't have any reason to lie about them. I think sometimes it's almost important that if you experience something, to share it.
People don't make up stories about kidney stones.
Trust me, it was not fun. And no. I've experienced a light episode about maybe a few months back. And trust me, one thing that I did, you know, the doctors told me, soda does create some of these things. And, you know, for whatever reason, it is a big contributor. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, damn it, no more. And I stopped. Besides the fact that soda has so much sodium in it. And even when you take the diet stuff, I mean, now the diet, we can talk about all the sweeteners that are all chemical and things like that. There's a whole discussion about that. So again, it's conscious decisions that you make. And that's the bottom line. You want to stay healthier. Your blood pressure is doing good. I mean, again, we don't know if we're going to ever get sick, but we do the best to prevent it if we can. That's called preventative, right? And that's the key element of everything. You know, you'd rather, if you know that something is going to be bad for you, why would you even entertain it? And that's it.
And people seem to forget that they're not just inflicting this on themselves.
Thank you.
Somebody is going to have to take care of you. You are giving up your autonomy. You are giving up your agency to this person or people who will have to take care of your sorry butt when you are no longer able to take care of yourself. And why is it so hard for people to visualize themselves down the road? It's like, if I can choose between this or this, which do I choose? You know, do I choose the wheelchair and dialysis, or do I choose taking tango lessons with my sweetheart? You know, I mean, up to you. To a very great extent, it's up to you.
Lynn, you mentioned two keywords a couple of times, dialysis, right? We're talking about kidney issues. Diabetes is a destructive power for kidneys. Also vision, as we know, extremities, people, lose their, legs, feet, whatever. I mean, it's very serious. It's a silent killer, as they say. It's one of the main, catastrophic, things. It's also very expensive to maintain. I mean, insulin itself is very expensive. And so if you're, again, talking about medical costs and everything, even if you don't pay for it, it's still costing somebody a lot of money. Right. So all these things are preventable, and we can certainly manage them sooner than later. And unfortunately, you're right. We just don't, it's not going to happen. It can't happen. I'm good. But you don't know until it happens. It's too late. And, but it's not too late. As you said earlier, there's a point that you can reverse things.
You can.
But you got to make, again, the healthiest and tough choices. And it will take some time to, to turn things around. So we want to give people hope that even if you are there, you can make a difference. If you're not there, you have an advantage. If you're getting close or stuff, it is time to start. The key is to start, the better habits, to start doing the right thing for you. And again, there's plenty out there. And, everybody can be affected and afflicted with these things. Diabetes is not just for any particular group. And you mentioned something else about, the sugar and the dentist. Even that, I mean, wants to have, it's not easy not to have your teeth. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's a tough thing, right?
And it's expensive. It's right.
Well, yeah, dentistry is expensive. You're right. And again, so it's a lot of things. At the end of the day, you want to be healthy globally. Head, spirit, physical, mind, soul, everything has to be the same. And there are certain steps to really take to be at your best, right? And we can all do that. Now you mentioned something key about this is not a decision that affects only you, but it affects your family. If you have dialysis, somebody else is going to have to manage you and take you back and forth. It's not going to be fun. If you're, you have to do insulin, somebody's going to manage this. If you don't manage it correctly, now you have ups and downs.
Give up a good part of their life to take care of you and worry about you because you haven't worried about yourself. And I see it all the time. And we can't imagine ourselves having our legs amputated, can we? I mean, that.
But it happens. It happened to many, and it can always happen. Yeah. Well, you said something also about autonomy. Think about this. I mean, who doesn't want to do what they love to do, and who wants to just be sitting? I mean, I get the same struggle with my mother. Like, you got to do stuff. You got to be active. You got to stuff, because without it, I mean, it's just going to get worse. And I know you would not want anybody to take care of you and carry you or do things. You want to do things. She's very, active on her own, and she likes to be as autonomous as she needs to be. But if she doesn't do correctly, that can be the problem. And so I always try to portray that. Listen, would you want someone to hold you, take you, bring you? No, you don't want someone to maintain you. You want to do this as long as you live. Well, the only way to do it, you cannot allow this disease to actually get the bottom, of you. So we tried. That's a message. My discussion with my mom personally, and she does her best to maintain it as much as you can. I mean, obviously with COVID, it's been a little difficult going out, things like that. But really, and that's the other thing. Like when you get to those types of complications, everything else can affect your body. A small like a cold, the flu can actually have bad repercussions on your health.
So when you're eating the way we talk about, you are eating for your immune system. 2, you're eating for your heart. Every system in your body actually benefits from eating the way we're talking about. Everything. There's no downside. Right?
That's correct.
So why wouldn't you want to do that?
It's a question people have to really ask themselves and kind of like really focus on that. And just maybe that's the trigger point is like, all right, now I know I need to make, hopefully people can listen and they will listen. There's
Okay,
thousands of people that, yeah.
Here's one more thing, Hurricane, that people don't know always that they need to know is there are sweeteners on the market now that are natural, healthy sweeteners that are really good. It isn't like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where all you could get was equal or aspartame or whatever. If you will look for monk fruit or chicory root based sweeteners, and I talk about them in my book, I list them all out and talk about the advantages and disadvantages. These sweeteners are amazing. And you can, I mean, the book is full of pie and cake and pancake, all these comfort food recipes that you can make with these sweeteners. And you make them, instead of making them with flour and butter and cream, you're making them with pumpkin and nut butter, which not only is super good for you, but it tastes better. I mean, these things are yummy. And the texture is great. It's just knowing how to do it with whole foods, with better foods. Because when you eat a brownie or a donut made the way Dunkin' Donuts makes it, you might as well just be, hurting yourself. I mean, they're doing damage. Every time you take one of those into your body, you're damaging your body. And I know I sound like I'm exaggerating, but it's small, but how many do you have in a lifetime? How many do you have in a month or a year? So there's recipes for donuts. Here, it's right here. Here's a book. If you want to eat a donut, make it from my recipes in here. Bake them yourself at home. They're fantastic. They're really good. And who doesn't want a pink frosting donut with sprinkles on it, right? And yet, if you make them this way, they're healthy. They're better than one of those health bars you get in the store, and cheaper too. So the brownies that I'm talking about are a meal. They're made with pumpkin and nut butter and spices, real cocoa, and not much else. They're simple and yummy, and they're healthy.
And we want people actually to really look into this book. And I'm gonna I already put the actual description and the link, for the Amazon. It's on.
So I can put it down now. I don't have to
yeah,
wait.
we have it. And by the way, that the idea is that we want people actually to reach out and get the information in the book. And really, I mean, listen, we buy things all the time. Sometimes 2 recipes can change our lives from that book, and that's the key. And maybe we're going to like every one of them and use it whole, So at the end of the day, if you really want to take care of yourself and your health, you audit yourself to actually look at things and find and discover new things. We are bringing the resources to you through the platform. And by the way, I want to ask this question to you, Lynn. We talked about the age. You do not look your age.
But what does my age look like? Why?
That's right. It's a very excellent point. But when we mentioned something about 75, people have a perception of what 75 looks like.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. And you and I had the discussion before about, I work with seniors and I've seen them in all spectrums. I've seen them younger, but not as healthy and as youthful. And then I've seen them at older age. And I mean, even the 90s, and they were like brilliant, with vibrant energy and dancing and doing the stuff. And they were just keeping up. It's all, again, it's to your point, it's how you treat this body and how you build.
Okay, let's be really honest. We're on Zoom, so there's this filtery thing we can do.
Yeah, it's okay.
Right? And so it makes you look just a little better maybe than you would if you were, in a different light or whatever.
I'll take it Zoom or no Zoom, because I can tell you one thing, you do look healthier, you do look, very active, and, I'm sure you do. That's a question I want to ask. Someone would ask, well, do you do any exercise also in addition to all this?
See?
Or does this conflict, I mean, eating, like being vegan 100%, does that conflict with you doing, with that, you don't need any exercise, or you do want to combine that with some sort of a regimen of workout or any moderate activity?
3 days a week. Now, right now, because Omicron just started and so on, and so my little neighborhood studio is stopping for the moment. But most weeks I go 3 days a week to a TRX and Pilates workout at a little neighborhood. Oh, honey. Little studio. My trainer, Kristen, is brilliant. She's wonderful. She's very patient with some of us who aren't terribly young anymore. But I do planks, I do stretches, I do all this stuff. Love it. It's so fun. And socially, it's great. These are my friends. I have a treadmill right next to me over here that I use whenever I can. And I have a great big dog or two. Here's this is Vigo right here. Vigo, you're on camera, I think.
I did see him coming through.
Okay, so I've got 2 dogs in here. So yeah, no, you got to move. You have to move all the time. And then when I'm not doing that, I've got Swamp Rock on real loud and I'm dancing in the other room. So I recommend that. Especially when nobody can see you.
Well, even if who cares, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's your life. That's what I want to convey to people. You don't want to collapse. You don't want to just kind of like, shut down. You want to be, and this is also psychology speaking. The more you are vibrant, the more you're alive in your activities, the more you're alive, literally. Bottom line, and it keeps you younger, keeps you like energetic. The more you kind of just stay closed up with no activity, everything shuts down. The body needs to be dynamic. If you put it in a stagnated mode, it's just kind of like really just,
You have to move. You have to move. Yeah, however you can. There goes Figo. Yes, and pets are good for us, and they're good for your microbiome too. It's good to have some little micro creatures in the air. It's good for your belly.
Listen, you've given us so much good juice here, a lot of insights and good stuff. I mean, the real things. I mean, these are not things that just were
so. And I hope people know they can get in touch with me on my website, lynnbowman.com. And I love it when people take pictures of their recipes that they're making from my book and send them. Or if you want to ask me questions about anything that I've said or recommend or any of the recipes, I'm happy to hear from people. So there's a message form on my website that you can reach me through. So please do that. Love to hear from you.
Thank you. And actually, the site also is on the description of the show. So they'll have both the book link in Amazon and the site. Okay. So please do so. And again, folks, all our shows are designated, they're dedicated for you and your health. You take the best of it. You take the most, whatever, the message in here. These are things that are vetted out. You're looking at Lynn and she's been, using all these things, for years, and it's been good to her. It could be good to you. It could be good to all of us. Take 1, 2, 3 items from her message and apply it, and it will make a difference in your life and your cherished, and loved ones, right? You can do this. And that's the bottom line. So we
do this. Yes,
exactly. We're here to just send a message and help people. And some of it may be obvious, like, maybe we're preaching to the choir, who knows? But at the end of the day, if this is already something you do, great, keep it up. If you're not, maybe it's time for you to start, or at least to be aware of what's available out there and what can work and what doesn't. So that being said, I mean, we've just exceeded a little bit of the hour here. And I know your dear friend there is actually seeking some attention.
I think it's time.
I know. It's like, oh, come on, it's time. That's it. He, right? I'm assuming he, she.
This is a boy, and then there's a girl right over there. This is
he is quite nice and comfortable there. It's like, I'm not going to bother with this guy.
He's a happy guy. Yeah.
He is. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being on the show and for sharing with us all the stuff. It's all great.
Thank you so much. So great to finally meet you face to face instead of just our messages back and forth.
Well, we made it.
And anytime you'd like me to come back and do more, holler. I'm here.
You have more to offer, and we're definitely going to have to do that.
Okay.
So there's a lot more stories that I'm not hear from you and want to ask questions about.
I got stories.
Well, listen, we can take this to the next level, which is motivation, inspiration, and you have plenty of that. And we want to bring you back on that topic as well.
Thank you. Okay.
So thank you, folks. Thank you for watching the iHealth channel. Listen to iHealth Radio. Hurricane H here. We'll be talking soon. Next show, next guest, next topic. Bye for now.